Rob Pennington, PhD, is a former university professor and award-winning speaker. He is co-founder of Resource International, a management consulting firm specializing in coaching leaders and their direct reports to be more successful in dealing with change and conflict. He's a 4-time recipient of the Mental Health Association's Outstanding Speaker Award and is one of MPI's original platinum speakers. As a frequent presenter at MPI national conferences, Dr. Pennington received the highest evaluations ever, and that's in quotes, for presentations at both MPI's President's Meeting and Chapter Leadership Forum. Many companies such as ExxonMobil, NASA, Shell, BP, the list goes on, have all had Dr. Pennington work with them in developing more effective leadership, communications, and teamwork. He was born in Beaumont, Texas, but grew up in St. Albans, West Virginia. He went to college at UT in Austin. I told him he was in Sooner Nation, and is currently living in Houston. His hobbies include golf, cooking, gardening, photography, Egyptology, which is interesting. We didn't talk about that at our table. Comparative religion, and watching college football on a 150-inch HD screen. We are very fortunate to have him with us for the next hour, so no further delays. Dr. Pennington.
How many of you are willing to admit that you don't know everything? So isn't it true there's some things you don't know that might be good for you to know? And some things you do know that might be better that you did not know? Aren't there some things you know now that you wish you'd known in high school? Wouldn't that have been a different experience? My purpose is to transform the quality of the rest of your life before 1 o'clock. It's not going to be difficult. Just going to require some ideas planted in your mind forever. I'm going to ask a series of questions. There's no correct answer to this. Just see what you think. Get a number in your mind. What percent of the conflicts, disagreements that you have with others do you think might possibly be because of a misunderstanding? Just get a number in your mind what you believe that to be. Everybody have a number? Okay, how many of you think 50% or more of conflicts is because of misunderstanding? Well, almost everyone. Anybody think 75% or more? Anybody think 90% or more? Justice Brandeis of the Supreme Court believes what you believe. 90% is what he thinks. Now let's just look at that. The conflicts that are, in fact, because of a misunderstanding. Now just looking at that group, conflicts that are because of a misunderstanding, what percent of this is because you misunderstand? How many of you are thinking of a smaller percentage? But how many of you thought of some percentage? See, in our more enlightened moments, we are willing to accept some responsibility for this. But in the middle of an argument, what do you believe about your point of view? What percent of the time? 100% of the time. Now, when you know you're right, what do you know about them? They're wrong, of course. And when you know you're right and you know they're wrong, what's your job? To prove to them that they're wrong, just trying to be helpful. Now, what percent of the time when we know we're right, we know they're wrong, we try to help them understand that they're wrong, what percent of the time are they grateful? 0. But what percent of the time do we do it? 100% of the time. Now let this sink in. A part of our mind knows that the majority of the conflict we experience as very real conflict is because of a misunderstanding. We know that. But in the middle of it, we assume it's not us. Automatically. And not only do we make judgments about them in their opinion as being wrong, we also make judgments about their motive and their opinion about us. Are you in that moment feeling valued and appreciated and respected? No. All of this happens in a split second, and it destroys marriages. It destroys relationships with our children. It destroys careers, and it destroys health. And it's a habit that most people have. There's a classic example of Betty Rogers. She's buried in Coral Gables, Florida, and she had inscribed on her tombstone, let's say the podium's the tombstone, she had these words inscribed on it. "See, I told you I was right." She's proving the point. She died to make a point. Every time we create an argument, we tear the relationship some, trying to prove that we're right. And it's a hair trigger thing. As a human being, you cannot control your initial reaction to anything. If I knew each one of you well enough, I'd only have to say one word with a tone in my voice and a look in my eye, and I could push an emotional wave through you of hurt, of anger, of worry, of fear. Your family knows how to do this. And when they don't like how they're feeling and they're taking it personally, what you're doing, they know what to do to punch our buttons. Now, I don't want to just talk to you about this. I want you to have an experience. So I need you to stop eating for just a moment. You can take a moment to finish what you're chewing. I'd like you to stand up behind your chair with nothing in your hands. And I'd like you to pair up with someone. Not everyone will have a partner. If you don't have a partner, raise your hand. Is that okay? Okay, Amy has a partner. Okay, all right. Could you come forward over here and join Amy over here? Say hello. Okay, between the two of you, I'd like you to decide on who's going to be person A and who's going to be person B. Just make that decision between you. No threesome. Carol? Are we missing anyone? Carol? No, come here. You're going to be my partner.
Okay.
Everyone? Anyone else is a threesome? Everybody's got one. Okay, good. For this, it'll work better if you're A.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Everyone decided on who's an A and who's a B? Okay, now that was the first conflict. Maybe. Let's see how you handled it. Some of you handled it this way. You said, "I'll be A." Some of you were a little more polite. You went, "You can be A." Some of you did this. You went, "I don't care, whatever you want." If you have two people like that, like, "What do you want to eat tonight?" "I don't care, whatever you want." That's a passive argument, So let's just make the decision clear. All the A's, raise your hand. Let's make sure there's one in every pair. Okay, good. Who's the A over here? Okay, good. Now, A's, let me give you your instructions first. When I tell you to begin A, what I want you to do is I want you to form your hand into a fist as tightly as you can when I tell you to begin. A little eager there. So A, when I tell you, form your hand into a fist as tightly as you can, okay? B, your task, and you'll have 15 seconds to do this, B, your task is to get A to open their hand in any way that you can. Okay? You have 15 seconds, B, to get A to open their hand in any way that you can. Okay? Ready? A, begin. B, begin. Congratulations. That's a great fist. You did that very well.
Thank you.
You've succeeded.
Yes.
Would you mind opening your hand and let me succeed? No. Do you know why?
Because I'm mean. Selfish. I'm selfish.
Well, I don't know. You have to think about that. Okay, time. Thank you very much. You may have a seat. Okay, have a seat. Okay, now, when you finish eating, let me recommend you turn your chair this way so you're not cricking your neck too much. Now, I didn't give you time to strategize that. So you behaved in some ways according to habits that we have. In psychology, it's called a projective technique. We projected some assumptions onto the circumstance, and that caused us to behave in certain ways. So let's look at the choices B's made first. All the B's, anyone try the basic force technique? You want to try to force the hand open? Now think about that. When you try to force the hand open, what do you know they're going to do? They're going to resist. So think about that. How often have we approached a conflict in a way that actually made the other person hold on to their point of view harder? We actually create defensive-ness in them when we want them to let go of it. Anyone go from the force technique when that didn't work to the pain technique? Get a nail in there, twist that hand. I did some trainings for some couples once, and the guy in one of the couples was A, and he was this big lumberjack macho guy, and you could just hear him thinking, no one is going to open this fist. You know? And his wife was this little lady, and she was B, and when I said go, she did this. She went, bam, just right in the solar plexus, opened that hand right up. Gives new insight to the communication patterns in that family. Did anyone try the basic business approach? Make an offer? No? I'm curious, B, how many of you, just the first thing you did was, just ask A to open their hand? Oh, that's quite a high number. Did it work? What a radical idea. Oh my gosh. Oh, with please. Isn't that interesting? Now, all of you B's who did not just ask the person to open their hand, I want you to think about why you didn't. And I think it's because you made an assumption that they would not want to cooperate. They wouldn't want to make a change just for you. Now, this may be because you know them. But more likely, it's an assumption we make about others and their willingness to change their position. How many of you grew up with brothers and sisters? How many of you had this experience? You're in a line with your brother or sister, you're in front of them, and you go, oh, no, you go first. Unless you thought they were going to get in trouble for going first. And you go. So those of us who grew up in that kind of family, there was some competition from very early on because, for instance, let's look at all the A's who did not open their hand. You need to think about why you did not do that. Now, my guess is you think you did not do that because that's what you were told to do. That you believe it was your job to keep your hand tight. Some of you are shaking your head. But I want you to think about the instructions that I gave you. All I told you was to make your hand into a fist as tightly as you could. I didn't tell you to keep it tight 15 seconds to prevent B from opening it. If you did that, it's because you made the decision to do that. But we tend not to do it based on what we believe is true. We do it based on what we think and understand our job to be. That's the way we do it here in our organization. Haven't you heard that said by people before? When you're trying to get them to change their mind about something? Now think about that, A. What would have happened if you had opened your hand? What would B have done if they got your hand open?
Celebrated.
They would have, because what would have happened? They would have won. And if they won, then what would have happened to you? Lost. Notice the competition. Just in this little 15-second game that really has no value or meaning. It's a habit we have of assuming competition when there's a difference of opinion. And a win-lose control power thing, it's all in there and we grew up with it. How many of you had parents who ever got angry at you? Keep your hand up. These are people whose parents got angry at you. Now keep your hand up. Now how many of you had parents who let you get angry at them? Ooh, a few, not as many. One? How many of you ever had this experience with a parent? You're angry at them, they're angry at you. And in the middle of the anger, they sit down and go, I can tell this is important to you. What is it you want me to know? Do you know why it's funny to hear that? Because it's so not what our experience was. Now, I want you to think about the consequence for you of not having that experience. What assumption did you make about how open your parent was to a different point of view? But you didn't just make the assumption about them. You made the assumption about authorities, about men, about women, about husbands, about wives. And it influences us in all our relationships if we're unaware of it. Please write this down on the handouts. It's not in there anywhere. What I'm unaware of controls me. What I become aware of, I can change. What I'm unaware of controls me. What I become aware of, I can change. As a human being, you cannot control your initial reaction to anything. It's too habitual. The goal is not to change that. In fact, a lot of people in professional or personal growth have the insights about how they could be. That would be better than how they've been. But they think that just because I have the awareness, I should now behave differently. And when they don't, it's confusing and frustrating, and they feel guilty, and they kind of beat themselves up, and I should know better.
Can you repeat that?
You'll have to start me off. I'm not even... what I am unaware of controls me. What I become aware of, I can change. Now, the change does not happen and that never happens again. The change happens by when it does happen again, which it will, I now become aware, oh, look what I'm doing. I'm responding in this old way. I now need to have a new way in my mind that I can move to. Otherwise, I keep going down the old path. Any of you in sales? Your main task is to get your potential customer to overcome their objections to your service and product. You don't want to create defensiveness in them. You'll never be better at dealing with sales than you are dealing with your family in this issue, because they trigger our deepest emotional stuff, where we're vulnerable. And if someone who's a customer or a coworker sounds like, look like, feel like, it'll trigger these reactions in us. But we won't think of them as something we're doing. It's they did it to me. We have a habit of assuming that our emotion is a result of the circumstance and situations of our lives. If you don't believe me about that, just listen to what people talk about. 80% of what they talk about is how they're feeling, what's causing it. But the emotion that you experience, positive or negative, whose emotion is it? Might you have something to do with it? You have to be willing to give up being right, because we use the intensity of our emotion as evidence of the truth of our thinking. The more upset I am, the more right I am, and others had better know it. True? And when we think about it, we get more upset, therefore we're really right. But all that does is it does prove that emotions come from our thoughts and beliefs and opinions about things. If you have a positive belief, you'll have a positive emotion. If you have a negative belief, you'll have a negative emotion. It's a law. All it means is that you have the belief. It does not mean that the belief is accurate. The intensity of your emotion is not evidence of the accuracy or truth of your beliefs. It is only that you have the belief. So if you have the belief that this other person is being disrespectful, and you're hurt and angry about that, we have a habit of using that hurt and angry as evidence of how right we are about them being disrespectful. When we're feeling that way, who do we talk with about them? Someone who agrees with us. That's why they're our friends. I mean, what would happen if you go to someone and talk about this other person, and this person you're talking to says, I wonder what your responsibility in the matter is. I thought you were my friend. These are habits that we have that influence us. They just aren't true. I can't control how I react to things, but I can learn to notice them and be more aware of them and have new alternatives to move through quicker and faster, etc. In your handouts, and Marcy, do you have an extra copy for me? Turn to the second page. Thank you. But look at the cover just a minute. Everyone has thoughts, emotions, and behavior. Our thoughts influence how we feel. Our feelings influence how we behave. Our behavior produces results in life. And our behavior can trigger their thoughts, which triggers their emotion. And we get this cycle of conflict that keeps going and going. I mean, the people that you have difficulty with, I want you to imagine, how long have they been the way they are? How long have they been the way they are? Their whole life. Aren't they going to be that way whether you're there or not? True? Not personal. Difficult, I grant. Difficult because we don't know how to deal with a person who's behaving that way in a way that we feel good about and that has the potential for actually improving the circumstance. And there are some people you can't do anything to improve. Some people are crazy. I mean, that's a professional opinion. There are people who are dedicated to their own destruction and the destruction of every relationship that they're in. And there are people who aren't going to see what their responsibility in the matter is until they've hit bottom. And frankly, for those people, the most loving thing you can do is help them get there as fast as possible. If that's what's required. On page 2. Anytime we move from what's familiar to us to what's new, it's uncomfortable. And so when people behave differently than the way we behave or the way our family behaves, we feel uncomfortable. And we go through this process. We notice another's behavior is different. We feel uncomfortable because it's not familiar. And then we make a negative judgment. By definition, if I'm uncomfortable, there's something wrong. If it involves another person's behavior, then their behavior is wrong. It makes me uncomfortable. Therefore, it's wrong. But we don't just stop at judging their behavior is wrong. We make a judgment about their motive. Why they're doing that to me. Disrespectful, not appreciative, not valuing. In a more personal relationship, not loving. And it's so strange in marriages. We marry someone because we love them and they love us. But then this thing happens over a while. And usually, like after the actual wedding. Then these little time bombs go off where they start to behave in ways and the thought comes to my mind, I thought they loved me. Because we have a belief about what someone does if they love us. What we're unaware of is that they have a set of beliefs about what someone does who loves them. What are the chances of you finding another person on the planet who has exactly the same beliefs you have? 0. Not even in your own family. Right? So what are the chances of you inevitably running into differences of opinion about what it means to love? 100%. The problem is when it happens, we think it means they don't love us. For instance, in one family, everyone loves everybody, but in this family, the way you know it is that we're telling you all the time. Love, 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 hug, 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 kiss, kiss, kiss. And we send out notices or emails or postcards when we're out of town, just so you know where we'll be in case you want to get together and tell each other that we love you. Another family, the way everyone loves everybody, but the way you know it is we don't have to tell you. We show our love. In fact, the way you know we love you is we don't have to tell you. Now, how is the first person going to feel being with someone who never tells them that they love them? How are they going to feel? Unloved. And what's their belief that causes them to feel that pain? What a person does if they love me. They tell me. So they're not telling me, therefore. See, it's all very logical. It's just not rational. Because that person does love you, they're just not doing it in the way they've been taught is loving. We used to have a thing in our shower where you pull it to turn it on, right, left, hot and cold, and then you had a little plunger that sends the water either up through the shower or down into the tub through the. And I, like most people with common sense, would turn it on and have the water come through the shower head, and I'd feel the temperature, and then I'd get in and take a shower. Now, my wife, for some reason, thought that the water was supposed to go down this way, and so when she turns it on, she leans in, put her hand under the faucet. Where's the water coming from? Hits her in the head. Rob, what are you doing? You left the water on in the shower. Does this sound familiar? Now, is she feeling loved? No, because she's uncomfortable. It's not how she wants it to be, and I'm not agreeing with how the person would do if they were carrying, etc. Now, how am I feeling? Being attacked. What? Unloved. What I realize is that I have a decision to make in these moments. Difference between a requirement and a preference. And the decision is, am I going to be married to one of those plunger in kind of people who need the water to go down the tub? And I decided that I didn't. Now that gives me some freedom. When you decide that something is not a requirement, you have the choice to negotiate. You even have the choice, and this is a radical idea, of doing what they want. Especially if you discover that in their mind it's connected to whether or not they feel loved. Small thing, push the plunger in, put the seat down on the toilet. Little things like that can make a difference, because now I know each time she turned the shower on and the water hit her hand, she felt love. So you can understand these things in a way not to take them personally, and you can actually learn to function in a way that you go from a pain to a joy. Either in not needing the other person to be different than they are, which, by the way, you shouldn't marry who you want them to become. You should marry who they are. And with everyone, I want to learn how to function with who they are, not who I'd like them to be. Now, first, it is important for me to learn how not to take it personally. I do it automatically. I do it all day long when people aren't the way I want them to be. I have this, someone cuts in front of me in traffic, someone doesn't listen, someone disagrees. I can't not have that reaction. It's a habit. But what I've learned to do is notice it for what it is. Oh, that's me taking it personally. And I do a little stress management stuff. I breathe, I relax, I reassure myself. I get curious about why they're behaving the way they do. And isn't it true that when you're hurt or angry because you don't like what someone's doing, it is also true that you don't know why they're behaving that way? Isn't it also true that you're confused about why they're doing that? You could express the hurt and the anger, and what's that going to do to them? Create defensiveness, make them hold on to their position, make them feel hurt and angry. Or you could communicate the confusion. You know, this is happening and this is happening, and I'm confused. Could you help me understand this? Now, you have to do that sincerely, and you have to actually be interested. You could say exactly the same words. Well, this is happening, this is happening. I don't understand. And it comes off as a hit. Just this little page, learning to notice how we go through this series of steps, can make a profound difference in your ability to respond in a new way to someone when there's a difference of opinion. There's more material in here than I will cover. The next one about emotions, you can look at that and understand that. I want to give you some insight about what to do in the moment when you run into a disagreement. When you don't take it personally, what you could actually do about it. Being neat for the hotel. Okay, here you are with your ideas, and what do you believe about your ideas? What do you believe about your opinions? What % of them are right? All of them. Now here's this person with their ideas. What do they believe about theirs? How many of you are having an opinion about me getting water on the floor? Now you want to get your ideas into them, and they want to get their ideas into you, and this is called an argument, and who is listening? Nobody. If you take it personally, you're stuck in this. All you can do is say it louder. But if you could really leave today knowing that, people are the way they are, whether you're there or not, it's never personal. And just stop taking that detour into thinking that it is. And some of you may need therapy and medication to do this, but it's true. What you want to learn how to do is go, oh, they think I don't understand. Which is, by the way, what you're thinking. Aren't you thinking they don't understand? You just want to try to make the point that they don't understand more. Take your ideas, which are right, I'll grant you that. Set them aside and do what you can do on your computer. Anytime you want to, you can create a new folder, open up new ideas, put new things in it. It's not true what my dad believes. He's 86, and he says if he's going to remember something new, he has to decide on something to forget to have some space. That's not true. And you just ask simple questions, and this is all in the handouts for you to review later. The first one is, okay, I can tell this is important. Remember the parent talking? What is it that you know? And when you say that to someone who's all full of their emotion, what are they going to do? They're going to tell you, which is what you want them to do. Oh, there's this and this and this. Oh, there's this and this and this. Yes! Now notice our tendency is to come back with our ideas immediately. No, that's not what I said. That's not right. It's a timing thing. So you do this, you listen, you repeat what they say, and you may think now it's your turn. Don't believe it. What's the chances there might be some more? A lot. So you ask a second question. Is there anything else? Well, there's that and that. Oh, there's that and that. And this and this and this? Yes! And now you'll feel really good, like you really listened and they're feeling better, and now it's your turn. 3 questions. Last question is that all? What's the chances there's a little bit more? It's very interesting if you go this far with this little process of these 3 questions. When you get to this point, almost always they'll say, well, because you asked. Which means you weren't going to get it. But because you demonstrated a commitment to communication and a concern, and actually they're feeling some caring for, they're going to tell you, well, there's this. Ooh, this, yes, this. How many times is the last this what it was all about? That if you didn't go through the this and the this and the this and the that and the that, you wouldn't get the last little bit, and you wouldn't get them to let go. Because at this moment, it's a very powerful moment. You already know everything you know, right? Now you know everything they know. They only know what they know. Who has the greatest potential for resolving things? Well, you got to be open-minded. You got to be willing to look at what they're thinking and what you're thinking and see what you can come up with that might be better. But the first step is to eliminate that there's a misunderstanding. There are 3 types of misunderstanding on page 5. The first one, you've all agreed, is the biggest one. Biggest disagreement is because of misunderstanding. The second disagreement, there is no misunderstanding. We do disagree, but it's negotiable. One of us is willing to suggest something that we both would agree to. And the question that I want you to learn out of today is in the middle of the page in the italics. What would it take for me to want to do what they want me to do? What would it take for me to want to do what they would want me to do? If you ask that question, I think the majority of the time you'll come up with something. If you don't ask that question, you'll never come up with something. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to agree to it, but I think the majority of the time they will. It's called negotiation. In the first category, where there's a misunderstanding, the agreement already exists. What you would agree to and what they agree to is already there. We just don't see it because we believe the misunderstanding to be correct. So we're not creating anything new. It's already there. We just have to get the misunderstanding out, and you have to not take it personally to be able to do that. In the second one, we can create an agreement by negotiation and compromise. Maybe not get our number one, but we get more than nothing. The third category of disagreement, at least for one of us, it's not negotiable. This is a requirement. This is a deal breaker. You do it this way or I'm out of here. But even in that situation where one person requires something to be, if the other's willing to agree, you got an agreement. Real disagreements only occur in the very rare circumstance where what one person requires is exactly what the other requires not to be. In that, there is no possibility of agreement. If that's the circumstance, you ought to find that out as soon as possible, before the wedding, before the contract's signed. Just the 3 questions. What does he want me to know? Is there anything else? Is that all is good? There's some more information here, the 5 levels of communication. I recommend that you listen to that and read that. On the bottom of page 7, there are 2 links. One is to a website, our website, where we have a lot of our communication models that you can download, worksheets and handouts, etc. The other is to my bio page, and there's an audio there on communication conflict stuff, mainly about the 5 levels. Is a nice follow-up thing for you to consider. Now, I'm curious, just in the few moments that I have left, isn't that right? First, are there any questions? Because I know lots of stuff. Yes?
I agree with everything you said, and I am wondering about the notion that he brings out the worst in me, or she brings out the best in me. Because if people are the way they are, whether we're there or not, what about that notion?
I think that's true. But it's saying more about us than about them. It's saying when they behave these ways, certain things get triggered in me that I like or I don't like. So it's not that, in a way you could say they bring it out, but it's me being with them that creates the circumstance or situation. But it's still about me. They may trigger me being hurt or angry or frustrated or worried or whatever. But that's an opportunity for me to learn how to grow better. I mean, my stepdaughters were my greatest teachers because they made it their purpose in life to prove to me that they did not care whether or not I cared. Now, that was not pleasant, but was it personal? Wouldn't that be that way no matter who their stepdad was? Yeah. I mean, their dad was a pathological liar. He was not there in many, many ways, and they had enormous hurt and rage, but too scary to express that to him. The relationship was too tenuous anyway. I'm the target for all that. It's part of my job to be the target and to teach them that love's greater than fear, that my love is greater than their fear of me not loving them. I mean, the only reason that they needed to prove to me that they didn't care whether or not I cared is how afraid they were that I didn't care. It took me some years to know this. And it took about 15 years for them to know it, too. The people in our lives who are the closest to us are our greatest teachers about ourselves. They trigger us. But until you get through this idea that it's personal and that they shouldn't do that and they're bad because I have these feelings, you're not going to grow. Now, sometimes you do need to get rid of people in your life. And that's a whole nother lesson.
Tell us about the warning.
Oh, thank you. How many of you, while you've been here in this little program, this lunchtime, have had the thought that there's someone you know at work or at home that you think would have benefited by being here? How many of you have already had the thought, I'm going to go home and I'm going to tell them, you're the one who should have been here. This was for you. Let me caution you. That would just create defensiveness. That would cause them to hold on to the way they're being that you're trying to get them to let go of. That's not the way. The way to do it is to make such changes in your own life, in how you handle things, how you respond to them. without saying anything about it. Just do it. And if you don't make those changes, that they go, wow, what happened? I mean, you're not doing it. So do it until they go, wow, what happened? And then say only, oh, I attended a lunchtime program. And if they don't go, what program? They don't want to know. And they say, what program? Well, share a page from the handout and see how they respond to it. And listen, if you don't make such profound changes, just as a result of this 45, 50-minute presentation, that other people notice and comment, would you please not let anyone know you were here today? You kind of keep that to yourself. One way of thinking about life is that it's a school, and your report card is how you're feeling. You need to learn how to wake up like Charles Fillmore, the author of the book, The 12 Powers of Man. When he was 94, Charles is quoted as saying, "I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm and spring forth with a mighty faith to do the things that are to be done by me today." Can you imagine what his day was like? How are most of us thinking when we get up in the morning? Oh, I gotta get up, I gotta get in traffic, I gotta go to work. We've been trained to think that we don't have a lot to do with how we're feeling, so it is a frightening, frustrating, upsetting experience when that's what you believe. But it's just a belief, and it's one you can change. And some of the ideas in here will reinforce that change, and will give you some tools to do it. And what I recommend is that you find someone else here who is excited about these ideas. And just as part of the work that you do together, you find ways to share and support each other in making these changes. We need that kind of friend who can go, and what is your responsibility in the matter? That's a real friend. And those you need to hold on to. Thank you very much.